Here's the official News Talk 1090 WKBZ forecast for today. Mostly sunny skies and another warm one with a high of 88. Winds out of the south at 5 to 10. Tonight, partly cloudy with an isolated thunderstorm possible after midnight. A low of 69. North winds 5 to 10. For tomorrow, partly cloudy. Isolated thunderstorms are still possible and a high up to 89. Southwest winds 5 to 10. Then a mix of clouds and sunshine for Tuesday with a high of 88. News Talk 1090, the talk of Muskegon.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dadgum government. Oh, don't you know?
Studios with my friend and engineer, the legendary Oscar Oswald, looking perky this morning.
And one sunburn on my ankle, yeah.
Quasi perky with a sunburned ankle. And our very familiar poop deck king of them all, Captain Fred Birch.
Poop deck.
Fresh from the poop deck. And we've also got as co-host for a little bit here this morning, Eric Rodoff, who is, among other things, a candidate for the county treasurer. We're not going to talk about your run for county treasurer now, but you've got an event coming up in a couple of weeks that we'll talk about in just a few minutes. So welcome to all. And as typical, we do have a full show this morning in the 9 o'clock hour. We're coming up with a third of the Republican candidates who have hopes to replace the very long-term, big spending, recently divorced Debbie Stabenow, Senator Debbie Stabenow. And that's going to be Randy Hekman. I apologize for stumbling along here. I just got thinking about another possibly a total of 18 years of Democrat Senator Debbie Stabenow. That would be very frightening. But senatorial candidate Randy Hekman will be in studio with us. He's got a very, very interesting background, a very deliberate candidacy, and he'll be telling us how and why he will beat Debbie Stabenow in the general election, which is, I think, the most important issue for certainly many of us voting in the Republican primary coming up in August. And so looking forward to that. Now, as we've said this before, we are and continue to be the #1 rated political talk show in Muskegon County, and also, I believe, in West Michigan. It's funny. We are the only media outlet that on a regular basis, at least in West Michigan, outside of television, that provides live political face-to-face. And this also allows you folks out there in radio land to give us a call. We are happy to have you on the phone. The number is 231-830-3109. And that's what we are about. We're about involving you. We've got a big, I think, enormously important primary coming up in August. And our hopes are to get you folks the information that you need so that you can make an educated and informed decision when voting time comes. Because a lot of people, this has been a very interesting week with the Supreme Court's Obamacare decision, and a lot of folks who voted for hope and change, who voted for President Obama, are finding out that they're not getting what they really thought that they were getting. And anyone who had read any of the autobiographies of, or not the autobiographies, but the biographies of Senator Obama at the time, anyone who had looked at his voting record as an Illinois senator or a U.S. senator, and most certainly anyone who had really read his own autobiography, had a very strong sense of who this guy was. And I think he's been fairly consistent with his voting record, with his past, and with what we knew in advance. But, of course, the media didn't tell us a lot of that.
Exactly, and don't forget that we also had the Arizona decision come down this week, and contempt charges against Eric Holder.
Yeah, lots and lots of very big issues that came about in good measure because of the Supreme Court, and that may very well be the most important single issue in this presidential election, because the President of the United States, of course, nominates the Supreme Court members, but
the Senate confirms them. So what we have here today when we're talking about a Senate candidate is far more than their issues or their interests in special issues. It might be Obamacare, it might be immigration, or any number of other things. But it's very critical for those of us on the right that we have a Senate that will confirm, hopefully, President Romney's nominees, or in fact, vocally and vociferously and with passion, campaign against nominees like we have seen that have come from President Obama. So, anyway. We want you informed. You know, one of the things somebody had mentioned to me earlier was, you know, Jim, you're running for, in my case, I'm running for the county commission seat in Norton Shores. As a matter of fact, Captain Fred, you are running.
I'm running in the 9th district against Ken Mahoney, who happens to be the chairman of the board. And
Ken was mentioned in an M Live article earlier this week when the soon-to-be, or actually the just retired mayor of Muskegon, and I think a highly esteemed, well-respected Mayor Steve Warmington had made some very critical comments about the county commission, its leadership, and the general makeup of the results of all of their efforts.
Well, I thought, you know, Ken writes my advertising for me. He went out and said that he wasn't really sure what anybody wanted from him. Essentially, it was kind of ridiculous as far as a quote.
Yeah, that was the quote. I'm not sure what they want from us. Well, we're going to have a show that will focus on these strategies, or the lack thereof, that we've seen from the Muskegon County Commission. But one of the things that I think is quite important that we all understand when we get out there and vote. People might say that I live in Montague, or I live in Norton Shores, or who knows where we live, but things that are going on, you know, in Detroit don't matter to me. Things that are going on in Muskegon Heights don't matter to me. And the sad reality is that when Detroit got into its mess, which is now going on, maybe its 4th or 5th decade.
Yeah, and it looks like it's true bankruptcy coming up.
Well, and it looks like it's true bankruptcy, but even before the bankruptcy, the city of Detroit and Wayne County have been a absolute black hole of sucking of taxpayer dollars, both state and federal, and now we're having a situation here where Muskegon Heights, which has just had, you know, it's not news that Muskegon Heights has not been educating its students and has not been able to pay its bills, the school system and the city. And what's going to be the result of their bankruptcy? It's going to be more and more of your money diverted from your roads and from your police and from other areas. So it does matter to you what happens in other districts.
Not only that, but if you look across the spectrum, across the United States, Detroit, Stockton, other counties, other cities, it all comes down to the same thing: lavish pensions and medical benefits in an unfunded system, which then starts to squeeze out initially other services for the community and ultimately bankrupts that community, that city, that county, whatever. And they're all following the same pattern.
And you know, let me clarify something that a lot of people are not aware of, and I was not until I got heavily involved in this. There are 3 ways that government, and let's just in our case we'll talk about county government, but there are 3 ways that county government can spend money. They get tax dollars in and they spend it. Okay, that's kind of simple. And on that basis, Muskegon County, like every other county in the state of Michigan, has a balanced budget. Even Wayne County and Genesee County. They also can issue bonds, and there are certain limits to the amount of bond issuance that counties can make. But the level is so high that it's meaningless to say we still have more borrowing ability. But at least there is some mechanism that keeps the bond issues down to a certain extent, and that is the ability of the county to pay back those bonds, and of course buyers are willing to invest the money. But there's a third one, and this is the one that's causing all of the destruction in Greece, in Detroit, in Stockton, California, in all over the country, and certainly most definitely here in Muskegon County. And that is promises made to pay in the future. And these promises are promises of health care benefits and pensions to the employees, in this case, in the county of Muskegon. And they're not accounted for, at least they haven't been accounted for, except for little notations, maybe half-page notation in a 300 or 400-page book called the annual financial report. And this is what is causing the problem nationally, and it's most certainly causing the huge problem here in Muskegon. And one of the smarter guys who's also running for county commission, a guy named Mark Molitor, who's running against Ben Cross in one of the Muskegon county districts, did some analysis. And currently we have, I'm going to throw some rough numbers out, but we have about $109 million worth of promises that are made to employees of Muskegon County in the form of pension and health care benefits, which include, by the way, vision and dental. For those of you who don't have vision and dental, at least you have the opportunity to pay for other folks' vision and dental. But that's $109 million, and the budget of the county is $42 million. So that's in and of itself way out of whack. And this is underfunding, by the way. This is not the total amount. If we had a $109 million check tomorrow, that would bring us to where we are supposed to be. And, of course, we'd have to pay more than we are currently paying just to keep that up. But that assumes an 8% compounded annual return on that invested money, which anybody who's had a 401k or an IRA knows that nobody's getting 8% compounded. Nobody has gotten it over any period of time for a long time. Matter of fact, the stock market's about the same as it was, I believe, 10 years ago. Anyway, they're assuming an 8% compounded return. Mark Molitor did some analysis using a 3.5% compounded return, and I think he came up to well over 200. I think he came up to, might have even been $300 million in underfunding, if you actually looked at it as a real number. And this is what's killing, not our state, by the way, which the state, interestingly, does not have similar type of benefits, of post-employment benefits. But when you talk to your county commissioner, with the exception of Commissioner Alan Jagger, who has been really at the forefront of trying to get an open public discussion about this, but when you talk to other county commissioners, number one, most of them don't know the number. And when you ask, well, when are you going to be addressing this, you get blank face. I suggest you all try that.
Well, and not only that, but remember, they said it wouldn't happen in Stockton, and they said it wouldn't happen in Harrisburg, PA, but it's happening all over the place. So don't think it can't happen here.
And it's already happened right across the street from us folks in Muskegon Heights. So, yes, it can happen. It most surely will happen if we don't do something. And we're going to have Eric Rodoff here, who's going to tell us about a way that maybe we can get involved and affect some real change. Coming up.
Oh, don't you love me sometime?
Value for my money. That's all I ask. If I'm handing over my hard-earned money to someone, I expect a lot in return. Most companies don't get that, but Dish does, and they deliver. Dish gives me the best deal around, with promotional prices starting at $19.99 a month. I also get HBO, Cinemax, Showtime, and Stars free for 3 months. That's value. And then there's the Hopper, Dish's new whole home HD DVR system that delivers HD content to 4 different rooms of your home. That's right, 1 HD DVR, 4 rooms of shows. Get more for your money with Dish. Call 888-770-DISH today to find out more. That's 888-770-3474. Limited time offer, subject to change without notice. 24-month agreement required. Cancellation fee and other restrictions apply. Call for details.
I knew I had a problem, but I didn't know what to do about it.
I tried counting calories, I took pills, eating, and then more eating.
I really wanted to stop, but nothing could make me stop.
At one point, it was so bad that I just felt like giving up.
I felt so alone.
Like nobody else could possibly understand.
We understand. We're Overeaters Anonymous, and we have helped thousands of people just like you. People who want to stop their compulsive eating and start living a healthy, rewarding life.
Overeaters Anonymous, help me get my life back.
Now I eat in a way that's healthy and good for me.
I never realized what I was missing out on.
With OA, I am living again and loving it.
Start living the life you deserve with help from Overeaters Anonymous. Find us on the web at oa.org.
I can solve difficult problems for a Fortune 500 company.
I can run a successful business.
I can put my military experience to work for your company.
I can manage your home improvements.
I can publicize a message.
I can teach your children.
But I can't put my skills to work for your organization
if I'm not given the opportunity.
Nearly 50 million Americans have disabilities. Capitalize on their talents with employment practices that benefit everyone. Learn more at whatcanyoudocampaign.org.
News Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you
And every pocket of all of our clothes, and we're finding that out, sadly, more and more and more every day. This is EyeOnMuskegon. I'm Jim Riley in the Clear Channel studios with the crew, Oscar Osbo, Captain Fred Birch. We've got Eric Rodoff in-house, going to talk about an event coming up soon. Going back to our theme song here, Roger Miller's Dang Gum Government. We saw this past week, it's not just government, it's the Supreme Court, which I guess is certainly one of the three branches of government. But they are, once appointed, they are unaccountable to anyone. And we have coming up at the 9 o'clock hour, Republican candidate Randy Hekman, who's hopefully, from his point of view, going to be our next United States Senator, and the Senate is critical in determining who our next Supreme Court justices will be. But good morning, Eric Rodoff, who's candidate for the county treasurer here in Muskegon County. But Eric, you're here for a different reason.
Yes. Today we have we got a candidate management training program that's going to be here on July 7th.
July 7th?
Yes.
Okay.
Coming up very soon. It's done by the Leadership Institute out of Virginia. I've attended them out in Troy, but this is the first time we're having them on the west side of the state.
Okay, now this is a little late for a lot of candidates. Why would we be talking about this today?
Well, there are a lot of things. First of all, we got school board elections coming up in November that you still haven't signed up for. But also, a lot of the stuff going on is managing volunteers, how to do precinct organization, the basics for online activism, how to do small events, phone banks, and also how to get out to vote.
Okay, so this isn't purely a candidate's training. This is for everybody who's interested. And I would imagine, I can tell you, as interested as I am already after the events of this past week with Obamacare and the immigration, and what was the third one that you...
The contempt of Holder.
The contempt of Congress, of the Attorney General of the United States over this just disgusting and sad, fast and furious gun running by our own government into Mexico. I'm a lot more enthusiastic about getting involved in politics today than I was actually last week. And now you mentioned something here, as I typically will, I'll bounce around. But you mentioned that school board candidates are coming up in November, and I haven't seen much discussion about that. They're not on the primary in August. Is that correct?
That's correct. I believe the sign-in was August 14th, if I remember right.
So if you're interested in running for school board, which is obviously very critical. We sit in one of the few counties in the United States that has a school system that has gone bankrupt. So it's right next to us. It's something real. We can see these poor kids and the families experiencing this. If you're interested in getting involved in your school board, you have till August. So you got to get moving.
Yeah. This change was actually because one of the new election cycles. They weren't normally in November. They were normally in March, but they had to change the dates.
Now, Eric, your event on the 7th, that's a nonpartisan event?
Yes, it's a nonpartisan event. It is center-right teachers, but everyone is welcome to come.
And what's the cost? Is this a freebie with donuts and?
No, it is $25,
okay.
But you do get free lunch with it.
Oh, it is. Okay, now let's get specifically. Where's it going to be?
It's going to be at 800 Ellis Street, or Ellis Road at the AMG Business Center.
Okay, so this is Bill Cooper's AMG Business Center, which is right at the end of Ellis, right at the end of the airport road there. It used to go through, does not any longer, so you get to it from Porter and Sternberg. And what are the times again?
It starts at 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
There's a lunch. How long does it go?
It goes to about 5 o'clock.
Oh, so it's a full day event for $25.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And Eric, this is not just for candidates. It's for people that are working for candidates as well.
Exactly.
Like campaign managers or even the boots on the ground, just somebody that's interested in things. So, it's a full day of interesting subjects, some of which you went over.
Well, I think there's even more importantly, or in addition to what you said, though, a lot of people say, well, the candidates are running, or they're on somebody else's campaign, whatever. But as Fred just said, if you are interested in helping out a candidate, this is a way you can learn. You probably meet some candidates there too. If you are considering getting involved in the school board elections as a candidate or supporting somebody, this is definitely for you. But don't forget, folks, elections are never ending. They're like taxes. And we have 2013 coming up. And there are going to be some very, very important city elections and other elections in 2013. And now is the time that you really start to plan for a year or 2 years down the road if you really want to affect real change. We're doing our best here at EyeOnMuskegon to get the information out about candidates for these coming up elections on August 7th and in November. But if you're thinking about really getting involved, if you're angry, if you're motivated because of the events of this last week, if you're motivated because you saw the disaster in Muskegon Heights and Detroit and Stockton, California, and Greece, for that matter, because it's all the same playbook. Spend more money than you have and then scream like bloody murder when the money runs out and just demand more money. If you are motivated because of this, now is the time to get going, because if you do not, other people will. I can assure you. That you talk about the folks in the unions who are heavily motivated, the people who obviously created the big mess out there in Wisconsin, the Acorn, the George Soros funded organization, quasi-organizations, AmeriCorps, and things like that.
Well, and also the counter organizations, people that are trying to make sure that the polls are correct, like True the Vote and other organizations. I mean, all of those things, this is valuable for all of those folks that are trying to counteract the forces that are out there. So I would encourage this. It sounds like a great opportunity. If nothing else, it certainly would be an interesting day the entire day.
Well, I'm going to be there for sure. Now, let's look one more time. It's $25. Give me the date and the time.
It's July 7th at 9 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock.
Okay, includes lunch. And it's at the AMG building right at the end of Ellis Road. How do they get in contact to make a reservation?
You go to leadershipinstitute.org.
Okay.
There's a login there, or it's also on my website, MichiganConservative.com. Or
Okay.
the .us, sorry.
Okay, one more time. MichiganConservative.us.
No, .com. I'm sorry. I got different ones at different ones.
There we go. Okay, well, it will also be on EyeOnMuskegon.com and MuskegonPundit.com. We'll have all that information and links. And again, I cannot more enthusiastically recommend this type of thing. You'll get a chance to meet some other people of like mind.
You'll be able to come out and meet those famous radio show personalities, right. Jim Riley and Fred Birch.
Fresh from the poop deck, Fred Birch will be there, and as will I.
Yay.
And
can I come?
Who knows? We might even get Oscar, the legendary Oscar, out there to video it. So, looking forward to it. And thanks for showing up today. And we will we'll continue to spread the word. But it's coming up. You say it's the 7th, so it's
what is
that?
Next Saturday.
Next Saturday.
Okay, so let's folks, get ready to spend your Saturday learning something and empowering yourself to affect some real change that might even replace the hope and change that has been kind of descended. The darkness has descended on our on our county. So thanks so much, Eric.
Thank you.
Well, we still got 2 minutes here, so you can do whatever you want right now.
Okay, well, we're going to go.
Anything he wants?
Well, you know what?
He is a radio star. I thought he would know that, but you know.
Well, I'm legendary for my inability to manage time. But
you have about a minute.
Let me tell you a couple things that just caught my attention. There was on M Live headline: Congress approves deadline for Asian carp report. Now, anybody who lives in Michigan, certainly any sportsman probably in our entire country, knows that the Asian carp is the potential for huge disaster. Here's Congress has just approved a deadline for the report from whomever is supposed to prepare the report. Folks, something is just horribly wrong that we've given the power to Congress, and yet it's the middle of 2012. And they are saying, darn it, we need that report. I guess that's the nature of the beast. Hey, cool stuff also coming down the pike. If you like the hope and change that we've all got available here, the USDA, big arm of the federal government, is encouraging folks, those who are not aware of the fact that food stamps, which they call something else, there's a SNAP program. But that SNAP is food stamps. They want to have a great party, they say. Host social events where people mix and mingle. Make it fun by having activities, games, food, and entertainment. Provide information about SNAP. So if you know somebody who's not getting free stuff from the government, the federal government is actually providing millions of dollars in promotions to folks. We ought to get some of that for the show. We can promote SNAP.
Absolutely, and some free stuff, too.
Yeah, there we go. All right, we will be back, folks.
Whenever Republicans are in power, we give tax cuts. It doesn't matter that they will run up a huge debt. So Ronald Reagan comes into office, and in 8 years, he runs up more debt. He borrows more money than every president from George Washington to Jimmy Carter combined. It was epic. It was mass. He tripled the national debt. No president had ever done that in history. We didn't do that fighting World War II.
The Tom Hartman Program. Catch it weekday evenings at 5 on News Talk 1090 WKBZ.
I knew I had a problem.
I tried counting calories, eating and eating.
Nobody else could possibly understand.
We understand. We're Overeaters Anonymous, and we have helped thousands of people stop their compulsive eating and start living a healthy, rewarding life.
With OA, I am living again and loving it.
Start living the life you deserve with help from Overeaters Anonymous. Find us on the web at oa.org.
Car number 7 is pulling into the pit.
What's my winning diabetes plan?
Start taking action now for diabetes. Medications.
Got them. And my insulin supplies.
Exercise.
Most days.
Blood sugar level?
On target.
Diet?
Eating healthy.
A1C under control.
Managing diabetes, including controlling blood sugar, is a team effort that requires a plan that's right for you. For more information, visit standfordiabetes.org.
A public service of TCOYD made possible with support from Sanofi Aventis US.
In the streets below, traffic had stopped. Pedestrians were lying on sidewalks and curled up in doorways. There was no sign of violence, no wrecks, nothing like that. It was as if the people in New York had simply decided to stop whatever they were doing and pass out. Ice coated my stomach. The invasion has started. To find out what happens next, read Percy Jackson and the Olympians by Rick Riordan. Explore new worlds and check out more cool books at your local library. And visit read.gov. Brought to you by the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
24,000 children die every day from preventable causes. My name is Liam Neeson, and I believe that number should be 0. Believe in 0.
Join the effort. Visit
Here's the official News Talk 1090 WKBZ forecast for today. Mostly sunny skies and another warm one with a high of 88. Winds out of the south at 5 to 10. Tonight, partly cloudy with an isolated thunderstorm possible after midnight. A low of 69. North winds 5 to 10. For tomorrow, partly cloudy. Isolated thunderstorms are still possible and a high up to 89. Southwest winds 5 to 10. Then a mix of clouds and sunshine for Tuesday with a high of 88. News Talk 1090, the talk of Muskegon.
Hi, I'm Jenny Garth. Heart disease is something I live with every day. It runs in my family, and it took my dad's life. So I'm choosing to speak up, and so can you. Tell people how it's the #1 killer of women. Tell them one woman dies every minute from it, and that 80% of cardiac events in women may be prevented if you make the right choices today. Join American Heart Association's Go Red for Women. Speak up to save lives at goredforwomen.org.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dad.
And we are back at Eye on Muskegon. Muskegon's #1 rated political talk radio source of information. And we are very, very honored to have Republican senatorial candidate Randy Hekman sitting here with us. Good morning, Randy.
Hey, good morning, Jim. Good to be with you, man.
Well, glad to have you here. We've got, of course, Captain Fred Birch, Oscar Osbo, and myself. Let's get right to it. We've got an extraordinarily important election coming up on August 7th. And if I can digress for a sec, August 7th is the date that many folks will go out and vote. But what a lot of people are not aware of is that absentee ballots were mailed out this past week to almost every community in Muskegon County. I'm assuming it's the same at the rest of the state. And we've checked with the city and the township clerks, and it's quite typical that the absentee ballots will be returned within a week of the time that they're sent out, so that people get those ballots and they send them right out. So a significant amount of the voting is already underway, and I know that when I was doing some analysis of the most recent, the presidential primary back in February, that in some of the districts and precincts, 50% of the voting was absentee. So we may very well have this election over within the next week to 10 days in terms of mathematically. No one, of course, will know that. But with that many people already making their decision, it's critical that they make the correct decision based on real facts. So that's one of the reasons we've got Mr. Hekman here. And the big question, of course, is why should a Republican, a hardcore conservative, going to vote in a primary Republican vote for you over the other three challengers that you're running against? Because what my understanding is, and it's my personal view too, but from the people that I've spoken with, the big question is, hey, any one of these guys would be fine, certainly compared to Debbie Stabenow, who's been a disaster for the state of Michigan and the United States. But why would I think that Randy Hekman could beat Debbie Stabenow when the big election comes about?
Well, obviously that is the question. That's what this is all about, is defeating her. I've known Debbie actually for a number of years. You know, people beat her up in lots of ways, but you know, she's a pleasant lady. But she votes bad, and she's not providing the leadership that we need in the state of Michigan. I guess the end of the day is, you know, we need somebody who can defeat her. And I was a prosecutor for a few years before I was a judge, and I always noticed that when I had a case against a female defense attorney, you had to walk a little gingerly. The jury did not want you to be seen as a bully. So, I mean, those are characteristics that I think I have. I have a wonderful wife. We've been married for 43 years. We have 7 daughters and 5 sons. I have 3 sisters. I think I know a little bit about dealing with the fairer sex, and I think that's part of what you need to do is to be able to, you know, treat her with respect and yet be able to bring up the distinctives that we have. The one thing that is different from me, from the other 3, even Republicans and Debbie, I've decided not to take corporate or trade association PAC money. I was a judge for 15 years. And if you give me money with the goal of buying my attention and getting me to do a certain action on behalf of you or your client in a financial way, I can't erase that or somehow separate that in my mind from a bribe.
Well, okay, let's address that. I think that's a very good point, because a lot of I've heard many people say that same thing, and I can't really argue against it, except we know that in order to defeat Debbie Stabenow in November, you're going to need money.
Well,
and this is
true.
a good way for folks who believe in your issues and believe in your cause and believe that we need a replacement, that the various PACs and corporate money, that this is a very good, legitimate, honest, and legal way to support you.
Well, I think it's legal. Can I quote from Jack Abramoff? Remember him?
Well, sure. Jack's freshly out of prison. You bet.
He's out of prison. He went to prison. He went over the top. He was a uber lobbyist on the Republican side for the most part. But what he said in his book, Capitol, C-A-P-I-T-O-L, Punishment, he said, "What I did not consider then and never considered till I was sitting in prison was that contributions from parties with an interest in legislation are really nothing but bribes. Sure, it's legal for the most part. Sure, everyone in Washington does it. Sure, it's the way the system works. It's one of Washington's dirty little secrets, but it's bribery just the same." And I've got to be true to who I am. And to me, there's a sharp contrast, again, with Debbie, not to put her down as an individual, but she so far has taken $2.7 million from corporate and trade association PACs. I think the public's sick of it. The public is sick of what they see in Washington. That's why Congress gets, at many times, a 91% unfavorable rating from its customers.
Okay.
We've got to change that.
I see this argument that you just presented as being compelling to Republicans in this primary.
Ooh, I think Democrats too, though.
And Democrats too, but this is in the primary. My question is, how do you get this I think, compelling argument out to the public prior to the November election if you don't have the money to let them hear about it?
Again, I've been pleasantly surprised that people are resonating, not just with that issue. That's just kind of a policy issue that I have.
It's an important one.
It is, but I mean, they like what I stand for as well, as far as what we want to do in Washington. But again, I'm the only candidate that's not only talking about that, but saying, look, we as a nation are really heading in a very bad direction. I think we understand that from an economic point of view. But there are times in the history of America where you really need to take a step back and say, what are the trends? Where are we heading as a nation? We need structural change in Washington. And my point is that you cannot make structural change unless you get a buy-in from the people. And I would suggest to you that the programs that we have in Washington, the welfare, both on the poor side as well as the corporate welfare that we have and the crony capitalism that we have in our country, is essentially something that the people want. And to change it, you're going to have to change hearts of people and to get people to buy in. You can't just go to Washington like all the other candidates seem to be doing it, saying, we're going to go there and we're going to fix this thing. Single-handedly, we're going to just turn this around, and even though the federal government is borrowing 42 cents of every dollar spent, we're going to somehow erase that and begin to pay down the debt. To me, without a buy-in from the people, it's not going to happen.
So Randy, what you're really saying is that this is a cultural issue as
That's
well.
True. I totally agree.
And that in order to do that, you need to start to change the culture across, at least in your case, across Michigan, but ultimately across the United States. So the question really becomes, okay, so how do we do that? You know, Breitbart had lots of ideas about that on how to...
That's Andrew Breitbart.
How to capture the social media and those kinds of things. What are some of the things that you would do as a senator to help change that culture?
Well, again, we've got to have leaders that pull our country together. You know, it was Lincoln who quoted Christ, who's saying that a house divided cannot stand. And we are a house divided today. And our president, I say this with grief, is doing more of that. He's dividing this group out, that group out, and so on. And we need leaders that are saying, look, we are in a crisis. It may not feel like a crisis, but it's the frog in the kettle that the temperature is climbing, and we will soon have a dead frog and boiling water. And we need to work together in this. We all are going to need to play a part in this problem.
So how do you get people to work together? Well, as a senator.
Well, as a senator, again, you can't legislate this, but leadership. See, we have made way too much of government in our culture. Government is not supposed to be as big as we've made it to be, but I'm going to take advantage of the fact that it is. It's amplified, and use that bully pulpit to communicate. I'll work my tail off in Washington to make the changes that we need to make to avoid disaster. But it seems to me that if we don't go around the country, we need to get churches involved. We need to get civic groups involved. I'm going to make myself available. I'm working right now 17 hours a day. I'll keep doing that.
I know you have been, by the way, just for those out there listening, Randy, you've been in Muskegon. I know this is at least your third, maybe fourth or fifth time, but
that's right.
You have been all over the state listening and speaking.
We have. We've put 70,000 miles in our car since we started this thing. I've been in it longer than any of the other three Republican candidates. And I say that not with poutiness, but with joy. I mean, it's a privilege to be working to preserve our country. It's worth preserving. But it's more than just going to Washington and voting Republican.
Yeah, and Randy, when you were talking about the changing of the culture, and then you started to talk about the fact that there's divisiveness that is ongoing, and in specific, I would point out that the divisiveness is favoring groups one over another. And we have a lot of that going on. We're special interest groups, whether they be corporate or they be gender specific or they be race specific or all kinds of different things. People are getting special favors and special things from the politicians. And so, I mean, are you here to tell us that you're not going to vote in that fashion? You won't pander to the voters?
That's not government's role. Is to set the boundaries for society, is to preserve us from enemies, foreign and domestic, is to have a criminal justice system, is to build infrastructure, but then is to be hands off, to allow free people to create wealth and to fail. I mean, that just sounds awful today. You mean you're going to let people fail? If you don't give people the freedom to fail, you don't give them the freedom to succeed. That's part of the problem we have today.
One of the ultimate problems that we see, and you said talk about government intervention, and a lot of people don't realize what the diversification, the diversity of government intervention that's out there, and why so many corporate executives are so supportive of this government intervention is because they get the money directly. And I'll give you an example. This is in the state of Michigan, but who knows? The money probably comes from the federal government in one form or another. But the Michigan State Police has a division of the office called the Office of Highway Safety Planning. So that sounds, make the highways safer. Well, they've decided to invest, which means spend money that they're taking forcefully from others. They've decided to invest in 400 talking urinal cakes. Now, women may not be all that familiar with these, but gentlemen are. And when you go into a bathroom, you may happen to look down and you'll see a little cake of some sort that makes the urinals smell better. Well, now these cakes will make the urinals apparently sound better, too. This is your tax money at work. Needless to say, the company that makes these things contacted the probably their elected representative and said, let's go, buy 400 of these things. This is the kind of thing times, 10,000, 100,000 that happens probably every month.
Yeah. Every minute.
Every minute. How do we stop that, though? Because this isn't the public. The public isn't out there clamoring for talking urinal cakes. This is a local elected representative, county commissioner, for all we know. This is so incestuous, going on all over the place.
Yeah, see, that's really my point. Is we try to put out the little fire here, little fire here, little fire here, but the result, but it really flows from a cultural sense that government is the heart and the soul of fixing this country. That the strength of a nation somehow flows down from government. Government's the nanny. And that's not the way it was supposed to be. That's not the way that it started. We have our Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal, endowed by their Creator, that God has given us rights, that among those are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. We've kind of forgotten that. I even like to quote JFK, honestly, because in his inaugural speech, he said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I mean, that's the American system. But it was really in the 60s when LBJ got president that we began to kind of change that, and government became more important. We're going to build the Great Society and engage this war on poverty. And, that started out $10 billion a year. Now it's close to $1 trillion a year, this war on poverty. And we have more poor in America than ever before, and the same percentage as when we started.
Well, I think also, though, you need to recognize, and I'm sure you do, that the definition of poor in the United States has changed remarkably over the years. I mean, you can be poor but have a big screen TV, a car, air conditioning, all of those different kinds of things. So the threshold for what you call poor all of a sudden becomes different, and we're spending money on things that perhaps we shouldn't be spending money on.
Well, for sure.
And so as we look at this culture, and you've already said that one of the ways that you would do this is not to be voting for special interest groups or special types of things. I mean, and you talked about the bully pulpit to some degree. But how do you start to inculcate the Senate with that sense? I mean, obviously, if you had 12 children and you've got 22 grandchildren, you know how to instill values in those people that are important to you. How would you do that in the Senate?
Part of it is that I'm not taking this corporate and trade association pack. I mean, you always lead by example. It's tempting as a parent to say, do what I say, not what I do, but that doesn't work. You've got to lead by example. There are other people in the Senate right now who I have a high regard for, so you build your coalitions as best you can. You lead by example. You don't point the bony finger, at least at first, in people's faces and start screaming at them at all. I mean, you work with people. I was elected as judge at age 27 against a well-known incumbent in Kent County. And I had 2 other judges on the bench, just to give you a sense of what I had to do. They vigorously opposed my candidacy because I was basically saying we need to change juvenile court in Kent County. So I had to go to this court. I was the junior member, 2 other senior members, and I had to convince them to make changes. You don't do that by yelling at people. And so it's a style thing. But you have to know where you want to end up, and you just keep persistently, like a dripping water. I mean, you keep going at it until the changes are made.
Is there a specific person or a group of people that you would model your governing after, and if you can, name them?
Yeah, well, someone I've really been impressed with recently is Jim DeMint, Senator Jim DeMint from South Carolina. I just saw him quoted in the Wall Street Journal the other day. He spoke to a bunch of corporate people. We were talking about corporate welfare. And they all were on the other side of this issue. And he says, look, in fact, his quote in the Wall Street Journal, he says, I do not know of a major corporation in America that doesn't have its nose in the government trough right now. He's got guts. And he's speaking it. I mean, he's a good man. I've met with him personally. He's a good man. And so that's just one. But there are others. And I hope with this election we're going to get even more, and we can begin to build this groundswell and earn the respect of the American people and do it right. We got to we'll never be perfect, but we can do so much better to bring this country back from the brink for the sake of our kids and our grandkids.
Well, let's get back to you, because that's why you're here. And truly, it sounds to me, certainly from the homework that I've done in doing research on you. And by the way, can we give your website with Randy Hekman 2012.com?
Yeah, and Hekman's a unusual spelling for some people. It's Hekman, so it's Randy Hekman 2012.com.
There we go. And but again, I want to go back to this compelling argument to those of us who are newly invigorated from last week's events. How can you beat Debbie Stabenow? One thing you've said is you've got, I believe, a very compelling argument, which is you're not going to be taking PAC money, which also has a downside. It means that's an area that won't be available to you. But what other items? I mean, to me, what other ways can you beat Debbie aside that are different from the other three?
Again, I talk not just about policies. Again, we need to talk about policies, but to talk about cultural things. We need to see that the strength of a nation are people. And I really genuinely, Marcia and I, as we get around the state, I mean, we love talking to Tea Party groups, Republican groups, but we really love going to Democrat groups and groups of mixed backgrounds of folks. We were in Pontiac the other day at the former Pontiac Rescue Mission, speaking to 300 folks who have gotten off of drugs and so on, and just had an incredible time. I've got a Democrat who's running for State House in Detroit who's endorsing me. African American.
I saw that.
Did you see that?
Yes, I did. Yeah,
Well,
on your website.
Now, why would an African American Democrat from inner city Detroit, by the way, he's a graduate of University of Michigan and law school, but just a neat guy, why would he endorse me? Because he understands what I do, is that we need structural change in Washington, and that's going to take cultural change. And the only way to really effectively do that in a short period of time is, in my opinion, and I say it without apology, is through a religious and spiritual awakening in the culture. And
extrapolate on what do you mean by religious? Because that's a code word that scares a lot of people.
I know, sure it does. Well, you got to understand that America, I mean, the most quoted book by far by the framers, the people that put our country together, was the Judeo-Christian Bible. They drew, even the separation of powers comes out of the Bible, believe it or not, from a verse in Isaiah, and many other things. I mean, they said, look, we want a government that is built on truth. We believe the Bible is true, and so let's just extract what we can or extrapolate what we can from some of those principles. Again, it is, we never want the church to have political power. That's not what we're talking about. But all laws are a reflection of somebody's sense of right and wrong. And everybody's morality or sense of right and wrong is founded ultimately in a world view. Historically, the worldview that shaped America was the Judeo-Christian Bible. That's the way, and it worked. 5% of the world's population in 200 years helped this nation grow into the most rich and powerful nation in the history of the world. And it's not because of our natural resources or anything else. It's because of the ideas that we have. So I talk about that. I'm not reluctant to talk about, the fact that, again, we don't want the church to become the government in any way, but we do need moral principles that undergird government. And that comes from a religious, it was John Adams that said our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. It's wholly inadequate to the government of any other.
Well, that certainly sets you apart from Debbie Stabenow, and I think that some of the other candidates, the Republican candidates, do share, maybe with a little bit less passion, but they share that your view on culture and religion and its ultimate effects. And I agree with you. I just question again. We're going to have Michigan is now a swing state. We have a Republican governor. We have a Republican House and Senate. We definitely want to beat Debbie. And we're going to come back with Randy Hekman, and we're going to talk about some more ideas that he plans to implement and ways that he can beat and defeat Debbie Stabenow in just a few months.
Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC is lighting the fuse for the biggest 4th of July sales event in Benton history. Now is the time, and Benton is the place to save during the 4th of July sales explosion. Every vehicle in Benton's massive inventory is marked down to record low prices. We're wall-to-wall with inventory, and it's time to blow them out. Save on a new Chevy Cruze, $109 a month. Silverado pickups, just $195 a month. Or a Chevy Malibu, $129 a month. And during this 4th of July sales explosion, extra trade dollars have been authorized. But hurry, time is running out. We want and need your trade. And if you're looking to lower your current monthly payment, get top dollar for your trade and save thousands off other dealer prices, Benton is the place. Shop today, buy today, drive it home today. It's that easy. Don't miss the July sales explosion. Only at Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC, both sides of Henry Street, Muskegon. Don't miss this sale. Hurry, time is running.
Holland Hydroponic Outlet has it all. Complete light systems, hydroponics, ventilation, nutrients, and soil in Holland, Grand Haven, and South Haven. Check out Torched Glass Art Studio next to the Holland store, creating one-of-a-kind glass pipes.
Clutching the envelope tightly, I stepped onto the ladder at the bottom of the treehouse. Something caught my eye above me and I looked up. Light! It looked as if there were a firework display going on inside the treehouse. Crackling and snapping and whizzing sounds spun around above my head. Light shot out in sparks, dancing to the popping of noise. And then I looked up and saw... To find out what happens next, read Philippa Fisher's Fairy Godsister by Liz Kessler. Explore new worlds and check out more cool books at your local library. And visit read.gov. Brought to you by the library.
24,000 children die every day from preventable causes. My name is Salma Hayek, and I believe that number should be 0. Believe in 0.
Join the effort. Visit unicefusa.org.
90 is the talk of Muskegon.
you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dadgum.
And we are back at EyeOnMuskegon with senatorial candidate, hopeful Randy Hekman, Captain Fred, and the ever-present Oscar Osbo making everything work for us today. I know the Fred's got a bunch of questions here, but I had one, and I keep hammering on this because I am a candidate for county commission, the first time I've run for elective office. And one of the things that I've noticed is that it does cost money. I've got a message, I think a very compelling message, as it's clear you have a very compelling message. I need to get my message out. In my case, it's direct mail, and there are a few other ways that we do it. Fred's working on the same challenges. Let's just assume that you are the choice come August 7th, or come actually today, as people are filling out their absentee ballots as they listen to the show. If you're going to turn down what is typically the mother lode, the largest amount of funds available to candidates, and this morning I happened to see on Fox News an ad from Pete Hoekstra. I didn't really think it was a very good ad, but it was an ad nonetheless. Pete Hoekstra did have his somewhat infamous Super Bowl ad. But if you're going to get your message out, and it is a compelling message, where are you going to get the money? The number one and number two, the places that folks typically look for are gone. In my case, it's your family and your friends. If I decided not to take money from my family and my friends, I would have to come up with another huge way of doing it. You've crossed off 1 and 2. I know you got a lot of kids, and I would assume you're an MIT grad and obviously an extraordinarily bright guy. I'm sure your family is very smart and very successful, but I doubt that they can fill that gap. Where are you going to get the money, and how are you going to get the word out?
All right, I did say I'm not taking corporate or trade association PAC money, but there are other PACs that I will take.
Oh, okay. Explain that difference.
Well, I mean, like Right to Life and Family Research Council and the senatorial groups and so on. I mean, to me, a bribe is where somebody gives me money in the hope of getting money back or some favor back to them that I otherwise would not do.
Can you clarify then for me? Then you said corporate and trade groups, and your concern with them is because
they want dollars. They say, look, we want access to you, Mr. Senator, so that our client can get a special tweak in the tax law, and we'll give you $5,000 with the hope we'll get $100,000 for our client back. Everybody's happy, and it's this incestuous relationship that I find offensive, and I think the public finds offensive.
Okay, the talking urinal cake companies, for instance, that are going to send you a $500 check and expect to get a big
contract.
Exactly.
Let's put this thing in. So to me, that's a bribe. But when Right to Life says, look, you're already pro-life, you've written a book on it in the past, we want to help you get elected because we believe in this, and I believe in it already. They're not trying to twist my arm. They're trying to amp me up, give me gasoline in the tank to be able to get the job done for both of us. That doesn't offend my conscience. So there'll be money that'll come in addition to individuals. But then there's a lot of business leaders, and so I get $10 here, $25 there, I get $100 there, just from friends who have never ever given a dollar to a candidate, because they like my character, very bluntly. They like who I am, and they want government to be changed. They're so sick of government. They're so sick of the way it's been done that I'm not worried about the money. We're going to get it.
Yeah, and I've got a kind of a question along those lines. We always talk about resources as if it's only money, and money does buy the resources, but resources are really manpower and material. That's the resources, and material obviously costs money, but manpower often doesn't. How are you putting together your grassroots piece, and how are you starting to appeal to individuals to come in and join the Randy Hekman team?
Yeah, and we saw that with the petitions. Again, we are green. We've got a lot to learn. My team has got a lot of energy, but not a lot of veteran experience in the political race, to be very honest with you. That's true for me and my team. That's just the way it is. But we pray. We seek God's wisdom on a weekly basis, if not more often. And I think by the grace of God, we've been able to see people. We've had hundreds of people help us with petitions, for example. We had 19,000 signatures. over the limit. And
let me just comment on that, because that's very huge. There were some other folks who were running for the Senate who were unable to get that. Getting how many total signatures did you get?
19,000. We needed 15. Yeah,
19,000 signatures is really quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, you know, it's so funny. I mean, my wife and my campaign chair on either side of me kept saying, "Randy, we got to get going on these signatures." Like, oh, it's not a problem. You know, toward the end, I began to see, you know what, we got a lot to do. But fortunately, we had 200 and some people from around the state that turned in, some of them hundreds of signatures, and got them in. And one of those that didn't make it, a Chuck Marino from the other side of the state, he, after, you know, he didn't make the cut. He's one of the 5 that didn't. He ended up endorsing me, which is really, he's working full time for me, basically, on the other side of the state for free.
Okay, well, and that's what Fred's talking about.
Now, there are also organizations, people like Independent Caucus, those kinds of folks that do endorsements. What other endorsements have you actually brought in?
Yeah, organization-wise, I can't think of an organization, but you know, we've got Dave Agema, who is state rep, and now elected by the Republican Party to be the national committee man. Tom Hooker, a state rep. Nancy Jenkins, a state rep. Rich and Helen DeVos, some people know that name. And a radio guy from the other side of the state whose name is Thayrone X. He's well known down there. You probably know Thayrone.
Oh, absolutely.
He's
sure.
a kind of wild man from Ann Arbor, but he's endorsed us, and we got others too. But.
Well, I think the fact that Dave Agema, who is fairly well known to those of us who are politically interested here in West Michigan, that says an awful lot.
Well, then on the other side of the political spectrum, again, we've got this Democrat running for state house in Detroit, African-American young man, Jonathan Wright. He's endorsed us, which is kind of interesting. So we've got a spectrum there of folks, and just delighted with. We got people in the Upper Peninsula. We got people all over the state that are excited about what we're saying, and I really believe we can get our message out. We're going to do okay.
Now, Randy, the other thing that we were talking about just over the break a little bit was you talked about empowering people, and the fact that rather than looking at groups of people and pigeonholing them in a specific area or a specific group, that we need to look at them as individuals, and how do we empower those folks? So can you give us a couple of words on that?
Sure. Again, the strength of a nation does not flow down from its government. It flows up from the character of free, self-governing people. And you know, there's just this sense that the poor, you know, just the best they can hope for is just stay on the plantation, as it were, and we'll just keep throwing food, clothing, shelter, medical care, and cell phones at them, and you just keep voting for us. We'll keep sending you the stuff, and everybody's happy. But that's demeaning. It's hurt families. It's taken away from individuals. And it's bankrupting our country. We have spent $16 trillion on this war on poverty. And guess what our balance sheet says our debt is right now? About $16 trillion. Interesting. But so we need to empower people. It's painful. You know, I got 12 kids, and I understand, and myself, it's painful to grow up. It's painful to accept responsibility. But at the end of the day, you feel better about yourself when you have tried something. Even if you fail and you get back up and try again. And, you know, we were talking about this guy, Ben Carson. He's kind of my poster child, you might say. Not a child anymore, but he's a gentleman, the gifted hands gentleman from Detroit, raised by a single mom, went through much turbulence in his childhood. The schools in Detroit are not worth very much, or haven't been. Hopefully that's going to change. But now he is the world's leading, he's grown up, he's the world's leading pediatric neurosurgeon. How many other Ben Carsons are there in inner city Muskegon and Grand Rapids and Detroit and Benton Harbor and so on? That we need to get excited about living and give them opportunity rather than just, again, buying them off. To me, that's demeaning. I want welfare to go back to where it belongs with charities and nonprofit and extended families so that they can, in an appropriate way, discriminate. That is not a bad word in this context. Between the worthy poor and the unworthy poor, the ones who are totally unable to help themselves truly and need help, and those who, with some prompting and a little tough love, can be encouraged to grow and be all that God made them to be.
Sometimes tough love, though, from a political standpoint, means we're going to stop the money.
Well, for sure.
And I'm not familiar with any municipality, any state, any elected official, or at least certainly most elected officials, you would be unique in this, that when the money stops, that they're going to support that. In other words, we have a situation here in Muskegon Heights where the school system is one of the very few in the whole United States that has gone bankrupt. The answer appears to be more money, perhaps in the form of a charter school or something else, rather than maybe moving the students into other school districts or other things of that sort. I hate to be cynical here, but when you say we're not going to take this grant, or we're going to cut off the money, certain monies to Detroit, so that you can pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, I can just hear the newspapers, the columnists, the race baiters, if it happens to be a minority community, just screaming, the hate, and that in fact you are the embodiment of everything that is wrong in America. How do you counter that?
Well, again, the word empowerment. The talking about the plantation, the talking about how demeaning it is, and then to show examples. We've certainly got them in West Michigan. I was up in Lake City where they've got this great thing where if you have a bill to pay, you can go work on this community farm for a period of time, and they'll pay that utility bill for you. Go to Pontiac, where the Grace Centers of Hope is a $4 million a year program. They don't take a state dollar. They are moving scores of people from homelessness to home owners. They've taken over 70 homes, fixed them up. I mean, there's story after story of how charities and private and nonprofits are helping people get free. We're talking about liberty for people rather than the slavery of the lifestyle of living off of government money. I mean, that's not life. Again, short run, people are going to get aghast at the idea, but you can point historically. There's a great book by Marvin Olasky, The Tragedy of American Compassion, showing the history of the welfare system in America, how there were periods of time when volunteers, Protestant, Catholic, Jewish volunteers would reach out and mentor people and move them to independence. That's loving. It is not loving to just keep throwing things at people, treating them like children rather than like the adults that they are.
You know, one thing I noticed in this conversation is, too bad we're not on television, although, of course, that would be painful for a lot of people. But the passion that you bring with this, and it strikes me that, well, at first glance, my political side of my personality says, "Oh my golly, this guy's he's telling people things that they truly don't want to hear," but in fact would provide the answer and would provide the real hope and change that's necessary to make lives better. But you are the only one that we've interviewed so far, and frankly that I've read about, and I'm a voracious reader, that is advocating specifically this type of change, that a cultural change. And if no one's going to advocate it, it's not going to happen. And maybe that in and of itself is a reason to vote for Randy Hekman.
Well, I think also in my travels around and talking to people, one of the things that I've seen is that people actually hunger for somebody to come out and start to talk about these types of things.
A brave change.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think
it is brave.
It is brave, very brave.
Because it sets people back.
Well, just bringing God back into the state is right there as a big thing that I think a lot of people are looking for, because there's so much of it taken away from. So that's one thing, and then, like you say, making people actually work for what they do, for their own. That's a tremendous thing right there in itself, I think. But
I agree with you.
Yeah,
absolutely. It takes a little bit. I have sometimes a purely political brain, and I must admit, as we're sitting here talking, and I'm seeing the passion, and I'm hearing what you're saying, I would like to hear what you are saying from other elected officials, other leaders. You don't necessarily have to be an elected politician in order to say what you're saying. I wonder what they're saying in some of the churches in Detroit and others. I would imagine that perhaps they're saying the same thing, but they seem to be accepting behavior that is certainly contrary to what you're suggesting.
But that is why this Jonathan Wright, this Democrat running for State House in Detroit, I mean, we actually, before he had endorsed me, and I actually endorsed him as well, he's in a 92% Democratic district. I tried calling the token Republican. He has 11 people, by the way, on the Democrat side for the primary. But before I would endorse him and he endorsed me, I wrote out 7 principles that I believe in. And they're contained in much of what we're discussing this morning, and he embraced them totally. So there's at least one other politician, albeit a 26-year-old Democrat running for state house in Detroit, that's echoing the sort of things that I'm saying on this side of the state, which is kind of interesting.
Now, on top of everything else, you know, we have this tyranny of bureaucracy.
Yes.
Which means that there's really an under-government. We have our elected officials, and we can change them, at least theoretically, during the elections and vote the ones out that we don't want and keep the ones that we do want. But the under-government, the bureaucracy, the massive amounts of folks that are in the federal government and the massive amounts of folks that are in state and local governments, how do you start to deal with them? Because that's another great big place where the culture needs to change.
That's true.
I mean, it's the old, I go in for my driver's license and, you know, somebody wants me to stand around for hours.
Now, Captain, did you ever work at the Pentagon?
Oh, yes.
You did? For a period of time?
Oh, yeah. I was there for about 3.5 years.
Yeah, well, I was there less time, but I was there as a lieutenant in the Navy. And, well, there's 20,000 people in that building.
Yeah.
And, well, anyhow, that's a good point. And you saw what I saw. I mean, there's a lot of waste in the bureaucracy. You know, we need a defense. I want a strong defense, but it's just inherent in a bureaucracy. There's no competition. At the end of the fiscal year, you want to quick spend the money so you have that money the next year. How do you deal with it? Little by little, cutting benefits at times, and but it's hard because it becomes an end in itself. It truly does.
Yeah, but I think if you're consistent with what you have said earlier here, that helps also. Well, we got to thank Randy Hekman for visiting us here today. A couple quick things before we go to break here. Randy, your website one more time is randyhekman2012.com, and that's Randy, Hekman. We'll have that link on EyeOnMuskegon and on Muskegon Pundit. I will say that your website is excellent. It's got a real quick, concise history, or not history, but explanation of who you are. And I certainly look forward to having you back as the Republican candidate after August 7th. Please, if you've got friends, family who are thinking of voting throughout the state, give them a call. Let them know that absentee ballot time is now. Get yourself educated. You can check our website. You can check Randy's website. And again, thank you so much and best of luck.
Thanks so much, Jim. Great being with you and Fred.
Alrighty, we're off to break.
Serious about your growing operation? See Green Lantern H2O in Muskegon. They are the only hydroponic and organic growing supply outlet with a certified horticulturist and nurseryman on staff. Stop by today and let the ladies help you grow big. Open 7 days a week. See them today on Laketon Avenue and US 31 across from Checkers. Green Lantern H2O.
Fox News Radio, I'm Liz White.
It was pretty much like an earthquake because you could feel it shake the house and everything. Yeah, it was crazy.
Violent storms killed 13 people, knocked out power to millions in the Mid-Atlantic region with a new round of storms in the forecast.
The Mid-Atlantic could be seeing more strong storms that could produce damaging winds. Very bad timing, that combination of those damaging wind gusts that we saw Friday night from some of those storms, knocking out power and also this heat wave.
Fox meteorologist Maria Molina. Residents returned to the scene of Colorado's most destructive wildfire to see what's left of their homes. About 350 homes burned to the ground near Colorado Springs. In New York this weekend, wedding bells for Alec Baldwin.
The 30 rock star tying the knot with Hilaria Thomas at St. Patrick's Old Cathedral in New York City. The 54-year-old actor began dating his 28-year-old yoga instructor last year and popped the question in April.
Fox's Steve Rappaport, Fox News. We report, you decide.
Here's the official News Talk 1090 WKBZ forecast for today. Mostly sunny skies and another warm one with a high of 88. Winds out of the south at 5 to 10. Tonight, partly cloudy with an isolated thunderstorm possible after midnight. A low of 69. North winds 5 to 10. For tomorrow, partly cloudy. Isolated thunderstorms are still possible and a high up to 89. Southwest winds 5 to 10. Then a mix of clouds and sunshine for Tuesday with a high of 88. News Talk 1090, the talk of Muskegon.
What's a lever action? What's a pump? What's an automatic? What's a bolt action? Hi, folks. I'm Tom Gresham, and I invite you to join me as we answer these and other questions on Gun Talk. Gun Talk is the only show out there about gun rights, collecting, personal defense, sport, and recreational shooting. And, of course, we never forget about safety on Gun Talk.
It's Gun Talk, Sunday afternoons at 3 on News Talk 1090 WKBZ, the talk of Muskegon.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you
Every pocket of my clothes, and it's getting, those hands are getting bigger, friskier, and actually there seems to be more of those hands.
Lots and lots of tax bites, 21 on the new health care bill.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? There was an interesting one on the new health care bill. Which had 21 new taxes, or not the new health care bill, but the tax implications now that it's in fact officially a tax. But it says that there's going to be an excise tax on the on what they call the Cadillac health care plans. And that's going to be 40% tax. Now, most of us do not have Cadillac health care plans, but the people who do have Cadillac health care plans tend to be the teachers union members and the municipal employee union members, which we have here in Muskegon County.
And I have a thought on that, Jim. You know, if we actually do implement Obamacare, the affordable health care policy, my question is why in the world shouldn't we move all of the public employees, the teachers unions, all of those folks onto that particular health care thing? It would definitely put us in a position where we take care of a tremendous amount of unfundeds across the nation, across the state, local governments, all those different kinds of things. It would seem to make a lot of sense to me. What's good for the people would be good for all the people.
Well, actually, that is really the dream, believe it or not necessarily of the unions, but that is the dream of the leaders in Michigan anyway. I don't know how other states work theirs, because it would take this $109 or $350 million unfunded promises to the employees and throw it into the essentially into the state or the federal promises to pay brackets. So in other words, it would move it off the table from Muskegon County.
And I'm certain they'd get the same level of coverage.
Well, the same level of coverage that you might expect to get in Canada or some of the other places where we're now seeing that those healthcare plans are falling apart. But you mentioned something about the veneer, and I thought it was worth repeating.
Thanks, Jim. What I said was that if you think of civilization as a veneer across the masses, and that if that veneer cracks just a little bit, if it ruptures a little bit somewhere, then the first time that you have an emergency, that veneer dissolves, and you end up without civilization, without the social construct that we need. And a good example of that is down in New Orleans, which had perhaps a thinner veneer than anywhere else in the United States.
Than most people realized, anyway.
Exactly. And so they had an emergency, and the next thing you know is the place was lawless. It was truly lawless. People taking away people's guns, people breaking into places, the whole thing with the stadium. That didn't happen in Mississippi, which was just down the road and actually got hit harder than New Orleans. It didn't happen in Pensacola when they got wiped out. It didn't happen during Hugo when Charleston got wiped out. But it did happen in New Orleans. And I think people need to ask themselves, why New Orleans and not Charleston? Why New Orleans, not Mississippi? And perhaps it was just a thinner veneer so that when the emergency hit, we ended up rupturing that veneer and the civilization was tossed out, at least for the a dozen or so days following the hurricane.
And as much as the major media tried to cover it up, of course, we found out since how really tragic it was. And I think that's interesting to compare, what your comments with Randy Hekman had been saying, where he brings something unique that I had not heard any of the others at least articulate in the way he had, which is, folks, there is a cultural problem, but there's also a cultural answer. And, of course, you can't fix any kind of ill unless you acknowledge that you've got the problem.
But the nice thing about what Randy was saying, at least the nice thing from my perspective, is that he is changing the terms of debate. He is actually getting his message out. He is talking and touching people on a routine basis. Win or lose, he has actually started to drive a conversation across the state of Michigan, which I think, and Oscar said this during the break too, I think that's one of the compelling things. We need to talk about this. It's a brave conversation. It's a very brave conversation to have.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And again, I haven't decided who I'm going to vote for yet. But my thought was, as we were talking with Republican senatorial candidate Randy Hekman, that in the event he was not to win the primary, I would really like to see this guy show up someplace in a position where he has, if not power, exposure to spread his message. Because
guts are short in politics. That's for sure. People that actually speak up and say what's on their mind.
Well,
and
absolutely.
Actually,
Eric Holder told us we were a nation of cowards.
Yeah.
Well, and it, certainly when it comes to race, that's true.
The other thing too is that when you have guts and you say what's on your mind, you tell people what you feel and what you think would fix things. People don't want to hear it, so they'll vote for the other guy, the politician that just, pretty much blows smoke up your.
Well, unless you're able to articulate it and you're firm and you do fully explain, because it's a lot harder to explain Randy Heckman's vision than it is to say, hey, you've got a free talking urinal cake, and that's an issue that we had our outgoing mayor. Well, giving people free stuff doesn't need explanation. Right. Here it is. We've got all the free money, all the jobs, the clean green jobs for solar panels and all that are now busting, putting all those people on the unemployment rolls.
Another one went broke this week.
Another one went broke just a couple days ago, and I think that.
Well, Steve's a good example too, like you're saying, because he always has pretty much spoken his. That's what I always liked about Steve, is he's always spoken what was on his mind.
Steve.
Wormington.
Oh, Steve Wormington. Yeah. Well, matter of fact, he was, and he left office just last week, gave a very memorable talk, and very specifically criticized the current Muskegon County commissioners about their lack of vision, about their lack of support, and of course, what was the I would call it.
I don't really know what they want from us.
This is the infamous response from the chairman of the Muskegon County Board of Commissioners, Ken Mahoney, and his comment again was.
He said that he didn't know what they wanted from him.
Yeah, and again, that's the old-style Muskegon politician that has gotten us into the position that we are here in Muskegon today, as opposed to Ottawa County, which is, believe it or not, is just booming.
Yeah, and really, it really comes down, and I think Randy Hekman really hit the nail on the head. It's leadership. Those are leadership qualities. And I know a little bit something about leadership because that's what I did for 30 years. And the fact is that you do have to go out there and you have to lead. You can't expect that somebody is going to detail to you exactly what it is they expect from you. You need to go out and articulate a vision. You need to go out and articulate a roadmap. You need to go out and then, with the people around you, gather them up, okay, and get them to help you achieve that vision. That's what leadership is all about. Some people say that leadership is getting people to do what you want them to do it gladly, and think that it's their idea and that they love it. So what you have to do is articulate that vision. That has not happened in Muskegon.
Well, you also articulate it, but you also have to acknowledge that it's necessary. I'm looking at our townships and our cities and our Muskegon County elected officials, the leaders from the county. Are they having town hall meetings? Are they bringing in the people? Are they using the strength of the diversity of intellect and
giving
ideas?
Candy at parades.
And do they?
Or are they giving out candy at parades?
That's what they're doing.
And are they doing that on a routine basis, not just during the election season? I went to a meeting the other night, and I won't say which one it was, but I went to a meeting at a township and there were 9 people in the audience, and 8 of them were politicians.
Yeah.
Now, why do you suppose 8 politicians, including myself, showed up at a meeting in order to essentially shake hands with the board members and one concerned citizen? It's a problem. It's a problem that our leaders are elected, especially our local elected officials, are not getting out and actually meeting with people on a routine basis. And I really appreciate people like Jeff Hansen and Holly Hughes and others, Marcia Hovey-Wright even, that go out and hold these coffees on a routine basis. They have coffee hours, they sit in restaurants, they talk to people, and they get the information.
Well, and I agree with you totally. We need much more of that. And a way to get involved, of course, is this campaign candidate forum that's going to happen next week. The links will be on EyeOnMuskegon.com. And, of course, we do have this. Right now, people are voting. Absentee ballots. Educate yourself. Next week, we're going to have an interesting roundtable. We're going to talk about some of these local candidates. We're going to try to give you some more hands-on information so that you'll be able to make that vote intelligently. And, again, a couple of other things. Of course, I'm on the Talkin' Muskegon show every Monday, Wednesday, Friday with John Van Wyck and Brian Worsham. We're on Monday nights, television, TV 38, Comcast Channel 397, 8 o'clock at night, prime time. Come on, guys. Thanks again, Oscar, Fred Birch, Senate candidate Randy Hekman, Eric Rodoff, and all you wonderful listeners out there in wonderful Muskegon land. Next week, we'll be back. You have a great week here in Muskegon.
Love me sometime. Whoa.
24,000 children die every day from preventable causes. My name is Lawrence Fishburne, and I believe that number should be 0. Believe in 0.
Join the effort. Visit UNICEFUSA.org.
This is Mike McCready, Pearl Jam's lead guitarist. Join me and help transform the lives of the 1.4 million Americans living with Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Sign up today for one of the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation's Take Steps walks at cctakesteps.org.
If you even think you may be in danger of foreclosure, call the National Foundation for Credit Counseling today at 866-687-6322 or visit mortgagehelpnow.org. That's 866-687-6322 or visit mortgagehelpnow.org. This has been a public service from the NFCC.
The Talk of Muskegon is News Talk 1090 WKBZ Muskegon and heard 24 hours a day on WOOD HD2 Muskegon.
On 8.
Good morning and welcome to the Polka Melodies on this Sunday, July 1st, 2012. That's right, it's July 1st already. Turn the calendars. The month of July is here. 4th of July weekend. Well, I'll tell you what, it's in the middle of the week, so you pick your holiday. 4th of July coming up. We welcome you to the Polka Melodies. Enjoy today's show.
Hello.